Welcome. My name is Bruce Reisler. This is our community information session regarding the Richland Hospital and Clinics Facilities Replacement Project. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Richland Hospital and Clinics since 2015, and I'm glad to have you here this evening. I'm joined by several leaders of this project who would like to speak to you today. If you hold your questions to the end of our presentation, which I promise is brief, we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers to follow. In 1919, the Federation of Women's Clubs of Richland Center purchased the Bailey Mansion for $10,000, spent several years converting it into a 14-bed hospital. And when the hospital opened in 1924, 99 years ago, in the same location, it boasted 7 employees. Fast forward 100 years, here we are tonight, many additions and renovations later. The Richland Hospital and Clinics employs about 425 people and occupies about 170,000 square feet and offers essential healthcare services to all residents of the greater Richland County area. We're here today to share with you our vision for the next 100 years of healthcare in a new facility, our plan for the continuation of a rich history of caring, educating, and healing. Our facilities replacement project is led by a dedicated group of community members and staff and involves all of the departments of the organization, including our board of directors, the executive management team, a planning committee that combines some members of each, and the Richland Hospital Foundation. So I just want to take a moment at the outset and ask those of you who are hospital board members, hospital or clinic staff, or foundation board members to please stand and be recognized. Thank you. I never want to pass up an opportunity as CEO to thank the people who surround me and help our organization to thrive and think about its future. So thank you all. My assignment for this evening is to recognize our presenters for this evening. To my right in the middle, Elizabeth Moore is our Vice President and Chief Financial Officer and plays a coordinator role for this project. On the far end, Ryan Johansson, who is a principal and an architect with BWBR, architect firm out of St. Paul. And to my immediate right, Marilyn Reinhardt, who is currently the treasurer of our board of directors and has also served in a variety of capacities, including the past chairperson of our board. And she has been on our journey of this project since its inception, so she has important words to share with you at this time. Marilyn?
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you for coming tonight. I imagine that many of you are here because of your interest in the Richland Hospital. I know, like many of you, I was born in the Richland Hospital. My family roots go deep, very deep. My grandfather was one of the 36 board members when the Articles of Incorporation were signed in 1927. It's interesting that at that time there were 7 or so employees and 36 board members, and now we have 400 employees and 10 board members. Who says we're top heavy? Some of us here tonight really have a lot of history with the hospital, and I imagine most of you have had some life events where you've been taken care of, well taken care of by the Richland Hospital in the current building. So it's more than just a building for a lot of us, And we hope that in the next year or so, when we're celebrating the 100th anniversary, that we'll be able to talk more about some of those memories and important things in our lives. But tonight we're here to talk about the building. Why is it that we're talking about the building at this point? Our most recent addition was predicted at that time to carry us through the next 25 years. And we'll be approaching by that time, by the end of that 25 years, a time when the facility will really need some attention. It's been well maintained. Some areas, like the inpatient addition, which is the latest addition, are quite new, in very good condition, would be ready to take us forward. But there are other areas that do not support contemporary healthcare practice and some of the many, many regulations that we face. So we would have renovations to do. So about the time that I started on the board, a facilities plan, a master facility plan was undertaken. That was finished in 2018, and what that showed us was that at that time, in 2018 dollars, there were about $20 million of repairs and improvements that would need to be done if we were to stay in the current location. There were infrastructure limitations, such as lack of space in areas like the emergency room, physical therapy, surgery, lab and x-ray. Maybe some of you have experienced those lack of space. Our infrastructure systems, such as the electrical, mechanical, air handling, heating, cooling, all those kinds of things which need to be upgraded, would be encouraged some costs. Parking space is limited, especially at the emergency room end of the building. There's really no place to expand there. So if we look at the timeline of 2018, at that point, we were saying we need to at least consider a building project sometime in the future. Real estate of that kind is limited in our area, really. We were looking for a location that was visible to most people. They could find it. It's accessible, about 30 to 40 acres of flat land. We wanted to be visible to people traveling to and through Richland Center so that it had a good way to attract people to the area. We hadn't totally ruled out staying in the current location, but we really needed to look into what are the possibilities. So at that time, Norbert Kellman and John Poole started to explore what was possible in the area. At the end, it looked like the former coal tractor site was probably our best option. We had concerns, as I know many of you did, about the environmental issues of the floodplain, and so we engaged Verbecker Associates out of Reedsburg, an environmental study group. They went through phase 1 and phase 2 studies to look at the site, and they determined that any kind of limitations were manageable at a reasonable cost, and that no action was required by the DNR. And so that made us feel like that would be a good site. And so, 2018 to 2022, what was happening during that time? Why didn't we move forward quickly? COVID came along, and you know what kind of disruption that was for all of us. Our hospital leaders and managers were responding to a crisis every day. There was always something going on COVID related. You also might remember that the Richland Medical Center merged with the hospital at around that same time. So a whole different kind of organizational structure was going on while we were dealing with COVID. The electronic health record had to be merged between those two systems, and that required a lot of energy. So lots of things were going on for the staff and the leaders at the Richland Hospital at that time. But meanwhile, during that period, the board members visited a variety of hospitals around the area that had faced some of the same things that we look at. An older building in a residential neighborhood without much space to expand. And they responded in different ways. Some of the places we visited were Hillsborough, Toma, crossing rivers at Prairie du Chien. We virtually talked to people from Sauk Prairie and Cumberland to see what their journey was like in their quest for how did they approach that problem. If you've gone through Hillsborough, you see that they renovated on that site. Most of the others built newer buildings. So we talked about all of that, And by 2022, we were ready to go back to the strategic planning process in preparing for the future. We know it wasn't just a matter of the building. It was a matter of looking into community demographics, evolving healthcare practices, policies, workforce issues. We were committed to the value of maintaining an independent hospital, continuing to work with UW, Gunderson, other specialists that we do now. But the independence would only be achieved if we were managing it in our most fiscally responsible way. And so with that in mind, we thought we really needed to have some experts help us out with some of those decisions. And that's why we worked with our management, our project manager, DWBR, Medcraft, our project manager, and our architect, VWBR. So they'll be telling us a little bit more about that. Some of the things that we look to are anticipated. The next slide, Shauna. We want to create a facility that expands ER and rehab and surgical space, that offers the OB and birth center. That is something we want to retain for sure. Addresses patient wayfinding and the patient experience within the building. Incorporates the latest technology. Creates efficiencies and flexibility. Allows for future expansion. Assures ease of maintenance. And supports staff recruitment and retention. So given all of those goals, we are proceeding fast forward now on how that might happen. So I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Moore, our CFO, who will talk about some of the financial feasibility of our project.
And thank you so many of you for coming out tonight. I'm Elizabeth Moore, as she said. I am the CFO at the Richland Hospital. I actually grew up in a small town about 3 hours north of here that's just a little bit smaller than Richland Center. So this feels very much like home to me. I moved here about 2 years ago and was fortunate enough to join the Richland Center Hospital team, where I serve as the CFO, but I also have been asked to serve as the internal point person for this project. So, as Marilyn said, one of the biggest components of that is looking at how do we most responsibly handle the resources that we have available to us. So while we're working on the planning and design of the facility, which you're going to hear more about from Ryan in a couple of minutes, we're also simultaneously doing some feasibility studies and looking at what can we really afford, how much risk does the hospital want to take on over the next several years. So we do have some consultants and partners that are helping us to take a look at those things. At this point, those numbers are still being refined, but what we've decided and what the direction the board has given us is that we think that we can handle an all-in cost of about $115 million for the full project. So that would be composed of $80 million in debt. It would be another $20 million in equity, so that's cash that we would just pay from the hospital. And then we are expecting another approximately $15 million from other sources. I will tell you, though, that any of those other sources that don't come in will have to be made up for by the hospital, and we're aware of that, or a reduction in cost somewhere else through the project. Alternatively, if we're able to secure other resources, we could then do some additional expansion that we're not building into our core project. So again, like Bruce said, we're going to hold questions until the end, but at that point, I'm happy to answer anything that you might have. Rob, do you want to talk about the planning process?
You bet. Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you for including me here tonight in this conversation. Again, my name is Ryan Johansson. I'm a principal with VWBR. We are a design solutions firm headquartered out of St. Paul with offices in Madison and Omaha, Nebraska. I too grew up in a small town community, town of 1,000 in a farming community, and I understand the need for a critical access hospital such as this, because minutes do count in certain situations. So, happy to be involved in this project. My role is really to lead our team of internal to BWBR. We have architects and interior design staff. And then we consult with our engineers. So as part of our team, we've got Bierbacher for civil engineering, whom the city has, or the hospital has been working with already in selecting the site. We've got IMEG as a structural engineer, also the mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, and then they also provide technology services. So they're incorporating those here as well. We've got a group called Rippey Associates that is specific to food service consulting. And then we've got Corbell Associates, which is specific to all of the medical equipment that goes into the facility. So it really is a large consulting team. So it's kind of orchestrating a whole group of people working in conjunction with Kyle with Medcraft, the Richland Hospital and Clinics team, and the greater community to develop the new facility. Next slide. Really, the process that we help lead the Richland Hospital and Clinics through is a very collaborative design process, and it's focused on the future of healthcare. We're not here to talk about how we do things today necessarily. That's served your purpose for the last 100+ years. We're here to talk about what is going to serve you for the next 100+ years. And like Marilyn said earlier, this is much more than just a building. It's the great people that provide great care inside that building that really matters. So we want to focus on the people, the patient experience, the staff experience, to make sure that they are all well cared for, so they can care for the community. As part of our visioning session, as we get introduced to the project and to the team, we pull all of those groups together that Bruce talked about, some board folks, some staff from all of the different areas, some folks from the foundation, and we have a conversation that we talk about the vision of the future. Where do we want this project to take us? Many of these are similar to what Marilyn talked about earlier, but what we heard from those conversations were that we want this new facility to be unique to Richland Center and the area that it serves. So what does that mean? That means making sure that the context of the building fits within the local context of the community. We want to make sure that the facility is focused on patient and staff and engagement. So we want to make sure that that building is welcoming, inviting, accessible, family-friendly. We want to make sure that it provides healing environments, has a nurturing work environment for the folks that work there. And ways to do that is, from the group, was access to natural light, and connection to the outdoors. I think as we certainly drive around, and I'll talk a little bit about the site analysis in a minute, there are some beautiful landscapes and beautiful views that we'll have access to. So we want to make sure that we're bringing that in as much as possible. We want to make sure that the facility is forward-thinking and future-proof. We know that the only constant is change, and what we plan today is going to change tomorrow. So we want to make sure that the spaces that we design are multifunctional and flexible for those changes going forward, and that we allow for future expansion. We know that there are new technologies out, that there are new modalities coming out. So how do we set the building up to expand as the community needs? We want to make sure that this is a first-rate, provides first-rate local care. So it's a place, as you enter the building, we want to make sure that people get that sense of feeling that they know they're at the right place, getting the best care that they deserve. We want the building to be state-of-the-art. We want to make sure that we're incorporating the infrastructure needed to accommodate those changes. Technology is one of those changes that is rapidly changing. So how do we make sure that we build the infrastructure into this facility to make sure that we can accommodate those technologies as they change? We also want the facility to be sustainable. We understand that resources are limited, like Elizabeth was just talking about, and we also understand that we need to respect our natural resources. So we want to make sure that the building is as efficient and sustainable as possible. So to familiarize you all a little bit with the project and the site, if you haven't heard where the site is located, this is a high-level image that shows where the current existing hospital is in yellow there up in the upper left corner, downtown Richland Center, and then our site is located on the bottom right of the slide. So you can get a sense for the proximity to Richland Center. It is along Highway 14, just on the east side of town, southeast side of town. One of the first things that we do as a design team is we really want to understand existing conditions and what is that level set baseline. So what do we have to start with, and what are the opportunities that the baseline presents itself. So when we take a look at this site, we analyzed this site early on after it had been selected, of course, but one of the things that jumped out to us was that easy access along Highway 14. So people aren't getting lost coming through a community, through the neighborhoods, trying to find a hospital when they're in an emergent situation, for example. The connection to nature, it's not often that we have sites that are located next to the Pine River Trail, for example. So our ability to take advantage of that trail that is existing, and how do we interact with that and encourage folks to be healthy and utilize that trail. And then the views. Really, if you go stand on the property and you look out, some of those long views are beautiful. So how do we position the building? How do we create space that captures those views? Because research does say that views to nature provide faster healing. So what we've been doing since we've been on board is working with the administration, the board, and the staff to work through the programmatic requirements. What exactly needs to be in the building? How many spaces do we have? And what spaces do we need to serve those treatment spaces? We've been talking about adjacencies. What are the optimal flows within the facility? As a facility grows over multiple years, you may find that something gets put in a position where it's not immediately convenient to another department that it needs to be. So we have that opportunity now with a greenfield site to say, what are the most efficient adjacencies to bring those departments together to create staff efficiency and patient flow efficiency in the facility. So we're also looking at the site in that circulation and flow aspect. And then we're just starting now to take a look at some massing of the facility. So we're taking those departmental adjacencies that we're working on. We've got a couple of options for different departmental adjacencies that we worked through just today with the project leadership team. And what we asked them to do today was, we had a couple of different options for some floor plans, and we asked them to test those options. All right, now put your hat on for, if you're an emergency doctor, put your situation, are you able to provide the care in that location? Put yourself as the mom driving to the emergency department. Are they able to enter the site and find where the emergency department is and easily navigate to those locations? So put those different scenarios on and test those different adjacencies and really understand, are there any pinch points that we need to shift things around, or is this the efficient layout that we have? Next, tomorrow, we're furthering those conversations. We'll hear back from those groups that did that testing and understand what worked, what didn't work, and then our team will go back and take those into consideration. So it's very much an iterative process. It's presenting some options, having a discussion, getting some input, and going back and refining it. So that's the stage of the game we're in right now, and the stage of the game that we'll be in for another couple of months here, refining exactly how this building lays out and what it looks like in the future. So I'm sorry, I'm sure some of you are here to see a pretty picture of, oh, what is this building going to look like, and I apologize, we're not there yet, so, but we will be. Thank you.
All right, so we have reached the question and answer portion of our program, the audience participation, if you will. While you're thinking of questions, I want to share with you that our intention is that our community relations folks are going to be capturing the essence of your questions and our answers, and we'll be recording those for our hospital website, richlandhospital.com. And if you would choose to, we hope you would stay informed on this project as it moves forward. We'll be updating that site as developments occur, so you can always have up-to-date information. So if someone would raise their hand to make a question or comment, we'll bring a microphone to you. There are no plants. We need
Hi, thank you. Just a couple of questions. One is, do you have an idea as to when ground will be broken? I mean, when is this going to actually start? And then my follow-up question is, I think in your opening remarks, Bruce, you said that our current facility is 170,000 square feet. Is the proposed hospital going to be larger, the same size, smaller? Are we increasing the number of beds? Thank you.
Sure. I can take those questions. There's a number of hurdles that the project needs to clear in order to be successful and reach groundbreaking. These essentially relate to our ability to secure financing, but also access to utilities and approval of various regulatory bodies and the rest. So the groundbreaking date is by no means set. These things are in question, but we're proceeding to address them. If everything were to fall into place, as we hope, we can imagine a spring 2024 groundbreaking. And then further, we would imagine that construction would require roughly a year and a half. So we'd be moving in as early as, let's say, early 2026, January. As to space, yes, our facility is roughly 170,000 square feet today. Our new facility is, its size is being determined by multiple factors. The evolution of healthcare, for instance, suggests that it's rare that we use all of our inpatient capacity today, and other factors to be considered. But that said, really the principal factor driving the the size and scope of our project is our budget. And our budget is determined much as, in a similar fashion as if you were deciding to build a new home and you were seeking a mortgage, and your mortgage banker would look at your past income and your ability to afford future mortgage payments, and they would look at how much money do you have for a down payment, and those things would determine the size of your budget, and your budget would determine how big your new house is going to be. So we are projecting a facility that is actually smaller than our current facility, at about 140,000 square feet, roughly. That is to be determined, but is driven largely by that budget. We are designing a building that is going to be as functional as possible within those limitations, because we need to be, fiscally responsible. Healthcare is a costly commodity, and our board has given us direction that we need to be good stewards of our financial resources that meets the needs of the community going forward, and we're confident that with further deliberations, we'll come up with a design solution that provides excellent health care for generations to come, and a facility further that, as community members, we can all be proud of. Anybody else can amplify on my answer?
Does that mean fewer beds then? We're at 20, I don't know, are we at 24 patients?
Yes. So our hospital is certified by the Medicare program as a critical access hospital, and that puts us in a favorable financial payment system for rural hospitals. And the maximum size of a critical access hospital under the Medicare rules is 25 beds. We have, in fact, 25 beds today. We've done some recent utilization studies that suggest it's rare that we're using anything approaching 25 beds. So while the decision hasn't been made officially, it's likely that we will have something fewer than today's 25 current beds. We're looking for further questions. Here we go, in the center.
I have several questions. First, do you anticipate any changes for the traffic on Highway 14 and how that would be routed to the hospital entrance? Also, plans for the old building? And then what do you currently have for cardiac care? Is that something you plan on expanding? And then you had said that you were expanding the rehabilitation department. Would that include massage therapy or acupuncture or other services like that?
Okay, glad I wrote this down. As you heard me say, we employ about 425 people. They're not there, obviously, every day, but just our employment base alone will mean that there are people commuting to the site regularly. We typically have about 200 clinic patients a day. We typically have 80 to 100 rehabilitation patients a day. So taking that traffic from the center of our city, if you will, out to our new location is going to mean there will be more traffic headed our direction. I can't really put a number to it precisely. I guess I will add it's rather common in our country when rural hospitals get replaced that more patients decide to seek their medical care at those new sites. We hope that that's something that happens, and that would also have an impact marginally on traffic. our current site, if you will, the old facility, the old building, here again, that's not a decision that has been made, and I can offer my opinion as the CEO, but I'm not the decision maker. That'll be a decision made by the board of directors. You know, our building obviously was designed to be a hospital, and that in itself will make it difficult to repurpose for another use of any type. Furthermore, as I hope we explained, really one of our principal motivations for leaving our current site and building a new one is that, you know, we believe that there's portions of our facility that are aging out in terms of the building systems and infrastructure. If there were a new purpose, a new owner for our current facility in the future, they would probably need to address those shortcomings, the heating and electrical and what have you, that you know, we are trying to put our money into a new facility instead of an old one. So it's my outlook or my guess, and again, this decision has not been made, that the likelihood is that our building would eventually be demolished and the location would be converted probably to a residential, seeing as we're in a residential area. So we will, you know, we will wait and see how that plays out. You had a question about cardiac care. Are we enhancing cardiac care? That's not something that we've specifically considered as a program. Cardiac care is a rather common intervention for hospitals of all sorts. That said, we're not imagining bringing a higher level of cardiac care, such as catheterizations or open heart surgery or that type of thing. We just don't have the population base to make that a prudent investment, because those programs are very costly to build and operate, and then you need a high volume of patients to make that a prudent decision. And it's I can say virtually unheard of for small rural hospitals like ours to have interventional cardiology programs. That said, I think we offer a very high quality of care for what we do on an outpatient basis. We have cardiologists on site routinely from University of Wisconsin Health, and certainly we intervene in cardiac emergencies on a frequent basis, so don't want to minimize that. Lastly, you had a question about rehab services. We're well aware that it's not uncommon for patients who are given a prescription for physical therapy, occupational therapy, cardiac or cardiopulmonary rehab, that there might be a waiting list. And this is not something that we can address merely by adding staff. The staff requires the space in order to provide the care that is being asked of us. And so what we're imagining in the moment here is really a better accommodation of the demands for services that we currently offer in those particular specialties, physical therapy, occupational therapy, cardiac rehab, and the like. We haven't ventured into massage therapy. There's massage therapists available in our community. It's maybe not the best use of expensive medical facilities to offer a therapy that is readily available in other settings in our community, in my opinion.
unless that, of course, would be inpatient massage like Mayo Clinic does, that kind of thing. As far as the traffic, I was kind of referring to like directly in front of the hospital, if any changes you felt would be potentially needed there.
So I can answer that one. I think the architect plan will include accessible parking that's convenient, so a clinic patient doesn't have to walk a long ways to the clinic access. Employees have access from another place. So we're hoping that the parking is convenient at different places around the building, and we just haven't seen a plan for that yet. Another part of the traffic issue I thought maybe I should mention is that during the site selection process, we had some input from the Department of Transportation, which was saying that probably there would be some necessary lane changes and marking of lanes and that kind of thing, but probably not something like a stoplight at that point, but could be done with lane changes, warning lights, some of those kinds of things. Hopefully a major access for staff and patients, but then sort of a utility access at one end of the lot, probably. So, yeah.
I have a question about the pharmacy. Is that going to be moving with the hospital when you go? And if so, are they going to have like a place where it's more private to pick up your prescriptions? Because right now everybody knows your business, so.
Yes, so the question is about retail pharmacy. As I think most of you are aware today, we are the landlord to the Richland Family Prescription Center, who is our tenant. The hospital does not directly operate the retail pharmacy that's in the hospital building today. We are making provisions in our planning to have a retail pharmacy space. We find that a large percentage of patients who utilize our clinic services choose to get their prescriptions immediately in our building, find that very convenient, and we'd like to sustain that service. We realize that there are shortcomings in the current facility design that you point out. It's contemporary best retail pharmacy practice that you would have a space for confidential patient counseling, so that would certainly be incorporated in a design for retail space. Oh, sure.
So I have a couple questions. So you said the groundbreaking would be, you're hoping for the spring of '24. What would be the anticipated completion date then for the hospital to actually open? And I apologize if I missed any of this. Is it going to be 1-story or 2-story, or do you not know yet? If it's a smaller footprint of the hospital, will there be the same number of employees kept there? With the magnitude of the project, I know that there will be specific contractors used, but if there is an opportunity for local businesses to bid those projects and they're competitive, will preference be given to the local businesses? Also, in the, I'm just going to say the capital campaign, as far as the fundraising, the length of the pledges, and what amount are you hoping to raise from that? And that's all.
Gosh, thanks, Sheila. Glad I wrote those down too. So, as I shared it, if everything falls into place, and that is by no means a certain, as we're seeking, for instance, USDA federal loan financing for this program. That's a competitive process. We might not necessarily come out on top, but again, if everything fell into place and we were to break ground in spring of -- roughly a year and a half to substantial contract or substantial completion, and then there's typically a shakedown cruise period that hospitals go through before there is the patients actually move. So sometime early. I've always been saying like January of 26 is when potentially we could be open for business.
Best case scenario. I mean, I think we should anticipate that there can always be extensions to that. That's really truly best case scenario, don't you think?
Yes. That's very nice.
Yes, it is. It is a best case scenario. We want to emphasize that. Perhaps Ryan could speak to the 1 versus 2 story.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a conversation that we had this very afternoon.
Perfect timing, yes.
As we were developing options, we developed one option for a 1-story facility and another option for a 2-story facility, and that's the exercise that we asked a lot of the staff to go through today, is to really test both of those options and see if there were efficiencies created more so in one versus the other. So I don't know the results of that conversation quite yet, because the report out from those smaller group conversations will happen tomorrow afternoon. So a 1-story versus 2-story has not been decided, but both are on the table and viable options. So they each have pros and cons.
As to the future number of employees in a new building, here again, that's not something that we've even begun a discussion on. So you're getting a off-the-cuff opinion, hopefully an informed opinion. Really the majority of the work that we as hospital employees perform, a lot of it is driven by the number and types of patients that we serve. And if anything, we're expecting our volumes to increase over the course of time. Our community is aging, and we hope to grow market share. And so to the extent that we're contemplating patient care related functions, those will likely sustain themselves or grow into the future. There's also, some of us who are support employees. If we have fewer, if we have less space, would it require less maintenance or housekeeping or something? Perhaps in time, but honestly, I can't imagine sitting here today any employee like losing their job because of this transition, but rather we would right size over time depending on conditions at the time that we open the new facility, and that would be done over a period of time. So I honestly, our employees are part of our team, and I can't imagine that creating a new facility in which to work would be a cause for a reduction in force that way.
Yeah, all in, we will not need less people. Right. VP of HR, right there.
Local contractors. Man, we are in favor. We as a not-for-profit, locally owned hospital, we're all in favor of utilizing local contractors. The people that tradespeople who work in our area, they're part of our community, and I think we're going to certainly hope and set them up for success if they're part of our team going forward. It's to be determined how that all plays out. That we are going to be entering a selection process in the coming weeks for a construction manager, and there'll be a number of subcontractors. we would love to have the new Richland Hospital be locally built insofar as possible.
I can speak then to the question about fundraising. A number of our foundation board members are here, and we're talking a lot about that fundraising. The option of a capital campaign is front and center right now. Angie Conan, our foundation director, is here tonight. Cindy Handel, the chair of the foundation committee. I've only been on the foundation board for a little time myself, but we do hope to start a fundraising, capital campaign fundraising very soon, and we hope that you all write big checks.
So officially, we're intending to be there's a feasibility around that question, Sheila, and so we don't have any kind of specifics as to goals or length of payment periods or any of that type of thing. These are all wonderful questions. There's someone in the back. We're coming to you.
Good evening. Are we too rural to think about having an offering of radiation treatments in this new facility?
The questions about radiation therapy, it's a form of cancer treatment. Here again, our hospital scale is probably too small. Our patient base too small to contemplate what is really multi-million dollar investment in space, in equipment, and then staff to operate it that are highly specialized. I'm not familiar, maybe Ryan is, about what sort of catchment area would be necessary, but we're well off the mark for a program like that on our own.
Yeah, having worked on a number of critical access hospital facilities, oftentimes, and we are including infusion therapy in the program today, but radiation therapy is one of those services that is not financially feasible for most.
Bruce, I'm sure you've gone through this very thoroughly, but with the new facility being 30,000 square feet, roughly, smaller than the current facility, that would imply that there's excess or unused space in our current facility. And I know that there are a lot of mechanical considerations, but would you help us understand why some of the unused space couldn't be repurposed to meet some of these needs?
I'm not sure I understand the nature of your question. I mean, we have more space today than our future building, but you're talking about repurposing the difference.
From my personal standpoint, is helping us understand the need to move away from the current facility, just so that we're all on the same wavelength.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand the nature of your question now. It's really not about why are we getting smaller, but why are we choosing to move at all? Is that correct?
Yes.
It is a vexing problem, to be sure, because as we are meeting with our staff, our leaders, and our physicians, it seems counterintuitive that you build a new hospital and that you want to make it smaller in any way. I think it is in large measure a proportion of why we want to make it smaller is because that's going to be affordable. And here again, we want to make sure that we are designing to our level of need. so that we are fiscally prudent with hospital resources and community resources as well. The principal motivation for moving, however, is, as we've been in our current facility for 99 years, that portions of our building, the building systems and infrastructure are aging out. And the master facility study that was done about 5 years ago indicated, that we would have to put in tens of millions of dollars to address these mechanical and building system failures, as well as design features that are not contemporary any longer, or we could start over. And after considerable amount of discussion with management and board, we decided the fiscally prudent way at this time to do it would be to start entirely over with a new facility rather than put money into an old facility. And we say, that it's these tens of millions of dollars, and even at that, we were not entirely sure that it would be possible to upgrade these facility systems. So I was talking with our maintenance director today, Don Scott, and being on the same site, you can imagine that there's 100-year-old sewer lines that service our building, and no way to remedy that and perhaps other kinds of building systems without shutting down the hospital for a period of time. So my long-standing analogy has been, if you owned a vehicle that had, let's say, 250,000 miles on it, do you want to put a new engine in it, or do you want to trade into a new vehicle? Now, that new vehicle is going to be entirely reliable going forward. The old one might not be, but you might need to downsize a little bit to make that new vehicle affordable. That's kind of analogous to the situation that we are in. We want a reliable facility that's designed to contemporary healthcare standards. For instance, our operating suites are undersized, and our emergency department, if you've been there, it doesn't necessarily promote patient privacy to the degree that we would like to offer. These things just require us to start over instead of staying in place. And the price of staying over is that we need to be more efficient in how we're using space than we are today. The wonderful thing about that is a new facility is going to be more reliable, it should be more energy efficient, it should be more staff efficient, and so there are going to be dividends and transitioning from the old to the new. Further thoughts? Does that address your question?
Yes, I think those are just things that we as the public need to know as to why this is the better choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll just say, there are numerous building systems that would need to be addressed, and if they were to be addressed, that would be a guarantee of the total operation sustainability over time. There would still be numerous shortcomings. So in total, it's the prudent thing to do is to start over.
And I would just add that is a conversation that we had in the board and in the board planning committee lots of times about whether that is really the best way to go. And so yeah, we were actually talking about it since we first talked about acquiring land. So yeah, we've been through that, and it's a really good question to bring up now so that people understand our decision.
So if we're going to have a smaller hospital And if I understood right, maybe we're thinking fewer beds, maybe 20, let's say, I don't know. Is the idea then, just sort of in a nutshell, just to get my head around this, that the areas that you talked about in the first couple of slides that said we're going to have better ER, better rehab opportunities, maybe even lab or something, is the idea that we're going to shrink patient space and we're going to expand those sort of auxiliary services to meet the needs in terms of like better equipment, more state-of-the-art kind of things, because we're going to need better equipment to meet the needs of the future health. Thank you.
Yes. So as we transition to a smaller facility, what are the implications? Let me assure you that really a driving principle is that we're designing our space and allocating square footage in a way that prioritizes patient care. But there are excesses in some cases, such as beds, that we don't need 25 beds, and perhaps we could get by with fewer. There's other occasions or circumstances where the space we have today, probably in concept is fine, but it's laid out in a inefficient way. There's columns or doorways where they shouldn't be or should be, and we want to, we'll be afforded the opportunity in the new building to make more, get more value out of the square footage that we're going to have. So I guess I wanted to add to that as well. Really, the allocation of spaces is, as we're approaching it now, it is kind of on a department-by-department basis, and there is not a general understanding that we're going to cut space across the board in equal amounts. We're looking at function by function, what needs more, and some does, and what needs less, and moving accordingly.
So looking at trends in patient care over all areas of healthcare, more outpatient and less inpatient over the last several years, if not decades. So that trend, our own numbers locally show that there's a lot more use of our emergency room in the last few years, a lot more use of our rehab area. So there again, it's more outpatient, less inpatient, and we want to build to that end.
And there are some spaces that are just easy, right? Like, do you remember on second floor where that old lab used to be and now it's just open? I mean, we clearly don't need to copy that, right? In our lower level, there's a whole bunch of storage space down there. Well, how much storage do we really need, especially now that a lot of our systems have moved to electronic and it's all automated? There is record retention rules and regulations, but we have subscriptions to services that take care of that for us off-site. There's also a lot of things that we store that we probably don't need to because we're kind of hoarders, so we've got to fix that. There's also stuff that we do need to keep or want to keep that doesn't necessarily have to be in the hospital itself. We could get, like a storage unit. So some of the decisions are pretty straightforward and easy. Some of the decisions, not easy at all. But it's not all hard. I mean, if you kind of walk around, the very first thing that BWVR did when they met with us on site for the first time is took a tour. And Don led them through the tour, and it was every single part of our building, from the top to the bottom, inside and out of everything, even the closets that have now become cable whatchamacallits for the IT wigamajigs, and so now we know what is easy, and then there's the other stuff. So working through it.
patient wayfinding, I guess is the term that's used too. When our accrediting group came, the leader of that group said, "I'm so glad you gave me a guide because I wouldn't have found my way through this building if I hadn't had a guide to show me how to get through some of these hallways and ramps and so on." So we're hoping that that wayfinding is much, much improved. And that's a waste of space if people are having hard times getting around here and there. If you look at even some of our clinic waiting areas, there's space there that's not used every day. You mentioned that lab space on second floor. There are no windows there, so there's not a lot that could be moved into that space. So building on the same site would take quite a bit of imagination, and then doing that in the process of running a hospital and a clinic in the middle of that, it's hard to imagine. Much more efficient, I think, and hopefully much more efficient in the long run for us to have a very accessible, efficient building, better use of our funding.
In the back.
Well, she's walking back there. I will underscore one comment about, since the topic is on square footage, that it's also our responsibility to make sure that the plan is built for future flexibility, right? So as we've talked earlier, we want to make sure that we right-size the facility for day one. What are those volumes that you're experiencing now and your community needs now? And how do we, as those volumes grow, how do we add those? So in the case of patient rooms, for example, whether it's 25 now or something less than 25, if it's not 25 now, we want to make sure that we have the ability to easily add up to that maximum of 25 in the future when that volume suggests it. So,
well, and that's just talking about expanding from a construction perspective, but you're also helping us to learn about opportunities to be flexible in terms of multi-purpose spaces. Yes. So like acuity adaptable. So that means there's a patient room that is equipped. So if you are coming in and just need to be an observation, you can be in the same room, but it's equipped so that we can flex you up to be a regular med-surg patient, but all the way up to an ICU patient while staying in the same room. So those are the kinds of things that we just aren't equipped for right now. And honestly, it's a lot of stuff that we didn't even know about because there's been so much development in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was just wondering, are there any services that you're planning to cut now in the proposal to meet the difference in square footage?
There are no services that we're intending to cut now at this point. Have we run out of questions? Or comments, endorsements?
Pep talk?
I did see in the news just a day or two ago that our, I'll say our neighbors, Lafayette County, Darlington Hospital announced their forthcoming groundbreaking of their replacement hospital. And when you consider it, most of the rural hospitals within, pick a distance, 75 miles, seem to have made these major sorts of investments over the last 10 years. Prairie du Chien, Toma, Hillsborough, Sauk Prairie, Crossing Rivers. Platteville is relatively new now. Darlington is relatively new. Upland Hills hasn't done a replacement, but they've made considerable investment. Lancaster, same. I'm not saying because our neighbors did it that we need to do it, but it is a rather common feature of our field that these investments become necessary over time. And now's the time to do it.
I would like to endorse your plan. I think you're on the right track. I think we need a hospital. I definitely think that our hospital is so important to this community. And if we can be more efficient easier access, the plan needs to go forward. Thank you.
Access is valid.
Well, I think we're ready to wrap up, and I really thank you all for coming, and thank you all for the great questions, things that we have thought about, and we know that you as a community have those questions too, so we're happy we had this opportunity to have you here tonight. And we hope you can be a part of any of our future presentations between the hospital, the construction, the foundation. Certainly it will be having some more events and opportunities for you to talk with our staff and our foundation members. So thank you all for coming.